one. Your panelists, though, for this next of our panels reads a little something like this. Please welcome up onto the stage, in no particular order, Country Head, HR Campus for Activewear Limited. It is Ambika Wadhwa. Varun Garg is the former Vice President, Human Resources for GMG. We've got Simon Smith, the Managing Director, the Saudi Arabia division of the Clara Group. Udit Mittal is the founder and the Managing Director of Unison International. And Parul Arora is Senior Director and Head of Human Resources, South Asia and the MEA region for Levi, Strauss and Co. Those are your panelists. Who's your moderator? Joining us now, Joseph Sam, who's the CEO at www.ikis.in and Rap Art and Design, and audit advisor at Unison International Consulting. So Joseph's going to be leading the conversation. Before that conversation, here is a little message from Unison International Consulting.
Very interesting topic. I can't even say it's after lunch, so anyway, this topic was actually sort of put forward by Unison a while back, and it was discussed amongst various forums. I think primarily because of the way retail technology has evolved from the front end. And what you can see is that today, while technology has impacted the planning, the merchandising, and the buying process, it's primarily also influenced the way recruitment has been done. Globally, the global recruitment market in terms of artificial intelligence application is $590 million. And by the year 2030, this is going to come to about $942 million. And this is a research by Forrester. And they're assuming in the next 5 years, this growth is going to come from Asia and the GCC. So I think one of the things that our panelists, what we're going to address is this change going to come in the way it is perceived by those in the consulting and the research business, or is this change going to be forced upon? So I think let's start off with the first question to Udit. Udit, one of the things as one of the leading recruiters that I want to ask you is, recruitment is about quality, time, and cost. Do you perceive recruiters undergoing this challenge of adaptation, A, and do you perceive candidates using it to their advantage or manipulating this?
So, hi Sam, thanks. So, I'll take your questions first for the recruiter's point of view. So, as recruiters, we are certainly benefiting out of the AI and datization because the chat, GPT, or whatever these tools are coming in are helping us make job descriptions, getting profile very clear, certain aspects of helps in certain searches. Whereas in terms of candidates, they are being smarter. They are trying to use the same keywords, manipulating the CVs, trying to get a CV right. It is good also. They're sharpening their axes, but the human element is certainly required because the candidates would make anything or write anything that is required, but may not be the real story when they have to deliver.
So how do you sort of use AI? When I'm saying AI, I don't mean artificial intelligence by itself. I'm talking about machine learning. I'm also talking about robotic-led automation. How do you use these tools to sort of ensure that you get the right candidate fit through the recruiter?
So right now, it's still a very primitive. It's just a starting time. So we're not saying that it's too much helpful, but it is going to be helpful. The outlines are defined. When we get 1,000 applications, the applications can be cut down to about 100 applications, which the recruiter can siphon out to another 10. And AI helps bringing this number down from 1,000 to 100 or to 10. And then from 10, the human element comes in and you find the right candidate for the company.
Okay. So I'm going to take the next question to Simon. Simon, you worked in multiple formats, and you've been working in a large number of brands. Do you foresee every format using these principles the same way, or do you foresee it's going to change? No, it's...
Hi, no, it's working. I think that every person in the organization will be affected. So when you look at a sales assistant and how they are working through their CV, in fact, many of them don't know how to write a CV. So understanding how AI will understand and drive keywords, there's a whole education process for these people to understand that and adapt themselves to the ever-changing environment. And equally from the organization point of view, massive changes. I don't know how many people have written a job description recently, but AI does all of our job descriptions now with a fine bit of tweaking. So I think you're seeing huge amounts of changes. I think there are a lot more to come, but the efficiency opportunity through AI in the recruitment area is huge. But I think there's a lot of learning from both areas to maximize the full potential.
But tell me, in terms of, let's say, a business school adapting itself to the recruitment needs of retail formats, do you think many more will opt for it or stay away from this sector?
No, I think where businesses see huge efficiency gains, they will opt for it. And I believe there are. And I think the AI, how the process runs, it will drive needs for the organization. And deliver outputs which are required. And I think organizations will take advantage of this.
So you don't see a doomsday situation where people are going to be laid off because of it and, you know, a drastic reduction in hiring?
No, I think, honestly, we're in the retail business and the front end still needs to have that personalized service. So I still see, I think we've seen the height of e-commerce. I'm not saying it's going away. It's still there and it will evolve more through Omni, but I think the front end will still need that personalized service. AI will not do that. Robots do not operate with the same level of personality. So I think in organizations there will be efficiency, but I think the organizations will reshape themselves and you might require more hands in e-commerce areas and digital marketing, and other areas will be fine-tuned, but I think the size of the businesses will remain similar.
Well, it's remaining similar. Varun, next question to you, and something which, because you worked in diverse markets, right, and you've been in the business of HR, right, a question that I need to ask you is that, do you foresee this issue of diversity and the issue of ethics being blurred when AI and ML come into place? Do you see that there are certain biases that will be overlooked, or you think biases will be aggravated?
So when we look at the...
If you can give a few examples also, please.
Yeah. So when we look at the current state of AI, which is quite premature, I don't think it's ready to operate independently, to be able to take decisions by itself. There are big organizations who were the early adopters, have gone wrong with their recruitment. They've actually gone reverse on their diversity and inclusion because their data models, the language models were already biased. So they were feeding in data to machine learning, and that data itself was biased. This was unsupervised data accumulation. And that sort of led into their recruitment processes. So yes, the technology is definitely not mature enough for it to address diversity and inclusion at this stage. Human intervention is absolutely needed. In future, yes, it would be. I mean, when we look at 2-year, 3-year horizon, AI will become a very solid assistant to the recruiter and to the hiring manager. But again, I don't see it taking the lead role. I see it as a tool which is available for a hiring manager or a recruiter to be able to take more accurate decisions, to be able to use their time more efficiently.
But what about things like biases? For example, when you're able to sift certain data points,
right,
aren't you also profiling candidates to the point that you tend to sort of discriminate to a point?
So the way AI works, it sort of relies on your ML data, your machine learning. Machine learning is nothing but your historic data. Now, if that historic data from, let's say, a company which has had a recruitment practices which favored a particular nationality or which favored a particular gender, if that data is simply dumped into that machine learning, the trend would continue. But if that data is cleaned up and supervised, and where we are feeding in that data which is more balanced, the outcome will become balanced. So it is more to do it what you're training your AI on. Is that training supervised or unsupervised? And then what are the outcomes you're expecting from that AI? If you're going to tell an AI that you want recruitment to be favored in a certain demographic type, AI will give you that result. Because at end of the day, you are the master, and the AI would deliver what you expect it to deliver. But if you're going to expect AI to fix a problem for you, then it will give you the solutions accordingly.
So, Ambika, so far they've been sugarcoating the part of the AI. Well, you've got to give me something about the risks and how do you mitigate? Because there are risks to it. That's what everybody's talking about, right? So there is this whole doomsday scenario that people talk about, that AI can replace jobs, AI can sort of bias you. And there are a lot of prejudices that sort of evolve into the system. What are the risks and how do you mitigate these risks?
Super. I think both of you touched upon the bias as the biggest risk, which again, all as HR folks would truly agree with, because that's ultimately historical data. And the historical data is going to preempt you to make decisions. So while discrimination, bias, as well as an overload of data in itself is a risk for all of us, the ways to mitigate could typically just be for the evaluator or the decision maker to stop and question their own selves, in terms of why are we making the decision that we are making. And a lot of times, just questioning ourselves 5 times before we make a decision that could be career creating or career deteriorating for the people who are going to be joining us is the most essential mitigation that I think. While of course, the data creators or the AI creators typically should be working very closely in safeguarding these data, building monitoring, building guardrails internally, but the end user is the one who should be taking the onus of studying the data and questioning the why on utilization.
But that's a company to company.
It is, because it's going to be driven, and it's going to be driven by the data available in the companies. Now, it's not only about hiring, right? We're also talking about the need to hire. The need to hire will come in when you start navigating your AI towards the entire life cycle of the employee. And that is where the question of threat would come in. How much of an employee's life cycle do I want to track? Do I want to track only the professional life cycle of an employee? Or do I want to also look at the personal life of the employee to see who he or she is connecting with? Where are they having external professional connections which could highlight potential movements outside the organization? So I think there's a very thin line between how much of it do we as HR professionals want to really penetrate.
You actually said something very interesting, because I know a couple of HR managers who've been, regardless of privacy laws, they've been asked to find out about social media activity of some of the potential employees, potentially those they want to recruit.
That's correct.
You think that, it's not ethical otherwise, right? But you think that AI, machine learning, and automation can be used to sift people based on that?
I've done it myself at some points in time. But like I said, it's very, very difficult to say what is right and what's wrong. There are days when I wake up in the morning and my Spotify knows what I want to hear. And I love it, right? And there are days when I find it absolutely irritating because that's not what I want to hear. So I think it's about the AI and the ML also growing on you with the apps that we're using and with the intervention that we want in our employees' life cycles.
Parul, you're looking at HR across continents, right? At least 2 or 3 continents, if I'm not wrong. Levi's caters to a younger generation, right, in terms of workforce, not in terms of client demographics. A question here is that with youngsters, we were talking about the Gen Z and the unpredictability of the Gen Z. How do you, foresee the use of AI and ML and all these things in terms of tech to be useful to ensure, A, that this Gen Z, the various variables that govern their behavior are able to be managed? Number 2, the gig economy that we're talking about, where students want to participate in making a little income on the side. Housewives and husbands whoever it is, homemakers, they also want to try out something for a couple of hours. So they're able to sort of, how do you use AI and ML to sort of map their behavioral tendencies, get them on board, and how to get the maximum amount of efficiency and productivity out of them?
Okay, so
That's a lot.
to me, there are two set of conversations here. One in terms of your own Gen Z employees, and probably I'll take that later. But the first one is around this entire gig economy, right? Which is definitely becoming a critical mass when we talk about organizations. I mean, be it freelancing, be it short-term contract, temporary contracts. I think this cohort of employees is now an integral part of the ecosystem. Which is definitely leading organizations to look at their labor models, kind of rethinking in terms of how reorganizing our entire talent management systems. I think specifically from a talent acquisition perspective, I think sometimes it goes back to basics, right? Of course, your tech, AI, ML will be your enablers, but there are certain things which are very core and foundational to how you're really attracting people. And I think for gig economy, a very foundational lever that organizations really have to review for themselves is what's your EVP for them? You know, what is it that you're really offering to your gig employee? Because your gig employee, unlike a very permanent employee who looks for a change only when a career threshold comes or they're unhappy with their manager, a gig workforce is always on a lookout. They never stop looking out. So for an organization, I think from an employee value proposition perspective, they need to really review saying, what is it that you're offering? What is your differentiator? Because differentiators are very few. Everybody can offer what the others is offering because there is very limited demarcations in terms of what people know. And I think that's where, once you've kind of identified that for themselves, is where your tech, AI, and ML will become your enablers. And they will become enablers in terms of your access to that data pool, in terms of how deeply penetrated is your brand, where these people are available, which wouldn't have been possible if you don't have the enablers like tech, AI, ML. The second is the speed to reach. How fast are you really able to reach that audience that you're trying to attract? And what language are you speaking with them? Which can be customized, can be made very relevant with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Talk about type A, type B testing on job titles. You know, hierarchically, many people like a title of director, but a youngster may not want that. A Gen Z may not want that. And through ML, AI, you keep testing that to say what is relevant, what is it that they want to hear, and how is it that as an organization I'm offering that to you. So speed to reach, the depth of reach is something that's very, very important when we're talking about the gig employees. I think the second critical element from a talent acquisition perspective for a gig economy is building for the future. Like I mentioned, these are employees who have very short gestation in an organization. Attrition is huge. So how is talent acquisition really building pipeline for business continuity for this particular set of identified jobs that you have in the organization? And again, for that, I think tech, AI, predictive analysis plays a big, big role in terms of how you are leading with future predictions. How do I backfill? Which partnerships do I build? How do I make my access to talent far more shorter is where they kind of pull into the picture. I think certain things, and I'll be very honest here, which I haven't been able to solve through AI, or I would love to hear from people, is how do I check for values? How do I check for behaviors? I don't think we have a solve there. And specifically when you're talking about Gen Z, where not one person is same to the other. Even in this room, your people across, one person is very different from the other. What motivates them is very different from the other. Unlike earlier times where you could kind of fit people into boxes, it's very difficult to do that. And hence, customization, personalization, very targeted way of reaching out to people becomes far more important. So I think that's one lever of values, the non-negotiables actually, from a talent acquisition perspective of those softer skills, it's very difficult to kind of plug in a data, tech, AI, or even market machine learning to that.
Can't it take care of things like training, for example?
That, of course, you can. And I think that's a very, very big play when it comes to training. Because when you're talking about gig economy, for example, or even Gen Z, you know, how do you onboard them quickly? Because while they are there for a limited period of time, how as an organization I'm maxing max from them in that limited time has to do with how well I onboard them. So we are using a lot of, organizations across are using a lot of tech to kind of do minus 10-day onboarding, on-the-spot onboarding of people, a lot of apps to kind of onboard them people, and in a very, very interactive way, so that they are kind of adding on and contributing to the organization much faster than earlier days. So gone are the 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
It is 1 week and you are as good as a 5-year-old.
Sort of deployed immediately.
Absolutely.
And you think that model can work in especially new economies, emerging economies?
It has to. I just feel that we have to adapt us to kind of get to that. It's like saying if you're opening a store, how long will you wait in that store for it to come to its full productivity?
Absolutely.
So if you have to think from an outcome of a business perspective, you will start thinking like that. And the good news is that there is technology to kind of help you do that. You don't really have to wait for the person to come on board to kind of start telling them what's really needed in the job.
So this is a question I think I should open to all 5 of you. Conventionally there's always been this go between organizations and candidates, recruitment companies. Do you think with AI and ML and technology, recruitment companies can get obsolete? Varun, smiling, you can start.
No, I don't think they'll ever be obsolete, but the ratio will certainly change because suddenly you have access to a very large database and you've got a system in between which is doing an excellent job in filtering and letting only those who are really suitable through the chain. So your recruiters and your hiring managers are spending a lot less time in finding the right candidate, even though they're doing it directly. But where the relevance remains is when you have to look at passive candidates. You're not looking for active candidates. You're not looking for candidates who are ready to apply or they would want to apply. But you are hunting down the passive candidates who are doing well where they are doing. They might not even be considering a job change. That's where recruitment agencies play a big role. When you have positions which are confidential in nature, when you're entering into a new market, new geography, and you're yet to set up your own team. So recruitment agencies are very much going to remain relevant. The ratio would change, yes. The mass hiring especially will become more and more governed and done by organizations.
So you think at the lower end of the pyramid?
Yes, the frontline workforce.
The front-end workforce.
The frontline workforce.
Simon, what do you think? I mean, considering that you've been working with all these formats, you think it's going to impact the recruitment industry? The recruitment industry?
No, I think the need for recruitment agencies is more and more. I think the individual need of organizations, driving personalities, AI will never give you this information. So I think the need to use consultants to deliver that personalized person, the individual person you're looking for, is even greater.
So, Parul, do you think, for example, on the flip side, do you think talent acquisition in-house personnel, would they reduce?
I think, again, it's a very easy answer to give, saying it depends, but it actually genuinely depends, because it's also about the organization internal org structure. So there are a lot of organizations which are very heavy on an internal talent acquisition team, and there are organizations which work on partnerships. So in my view, I think either your number of people in the talent acquisition team will have an impact. And when I say impact, not just in terms of numbers, I think we all have been touching this sensitive topic of saying, will it impact jobs? I think what it impacts is roles and responsibilities, and what is the kind of role that you're doing. Now, with access to talent being easy, be it your internal recruiter or be it your MSP partners who we work with from a talent acquisition perspective, I think the expectation will drastically change. The expectations will be faster SLAs, far more personalization, and far more conversions. I think so your TATs, your KPIs that you're dealing with them will definitely change. But I personally don't believe that there will be reduction in that, because I also feel that there will be much, much faster churn in the market, for which you will definitely need support.
Udit, with an extensive recruitment network, what do you think? Is this going to be a balance? Because Varun's saying that something is going to get impacted, right? Which everybody agrees. Is it going to be recruiters or in-house talent acquisition personnel?
Sam, LinkedIn still exists, Naukri.com still exists, and other job portals exist. And they're using some bit of AI and digitization, but recruitment firms still exist. And I think the human element is not going to be replaced by AI in any which ways. So, said that, I think we are there to stay, and we need to reinvent ourselves.
Right.
Change a bit of thinking. Probably the AI will also, it will be helping the companies out, will also be benefiting us, our recruiters, to be more efficient. And like Parul said, the TAT will change, the efficiency will change, the expectation in terms of, like we ask for a job description, we won't have to ask for a job description. The candidate assessment sheets will change. We would probably be putting more efficiency in that. We could evaluate candidates better. So things would be better for us also, and we'll be able to give a better valued service.
Value services. Ambika, Forrester, PwC, one of them said that the cost of recruitment is reduced by 75% in Europe and the US. Now, the cost of recruitment is very low in Asia. Do you think it's going to be the same way? I mean, is it significant enough?
I think I'm going to actually be partnering with my friends like Udit a lot more differently.
Okay.
I would probably not ask them to only give me CVs. I would ask them to give me thoroughly interviewed candidates. Because if that's the kind of utilization that I want to get done, then I would practically be partnering with them on cultural assessments as well as longevity in the roles and personal aspirations. So I think their jobs will become a lot more tedious, but a lot more meaningful, even for my junior level recruitments, because ultimately a lot of work in terms of sourcing, screening, and the shortlisting is going to be managed by ML. But the human interaction is where I think they'll have a bigger role to play.
You've seen a lot of video with your CVs, a lot of videos uploaded. Do you think that can be used for machine learning in terms of assessment of candidates, in terms of personality and the way they react to situations?
There is going to be some more study there, Sam, because in reality, videos might not really be entire indicators. There are a lot of psychometric tests that happen. So at Uber, we started looking at something very differently. We said we would look at how a candidate walks into the office, sits at the reception, speaks to the guard or the security person, and how does the person communicate with my driver partners. So all of that intelligence went into behavioral assessment. So that is the role typically I would want my recruitment partners to be playing, to actually tell us if we are able to hire people with meaning and purpose in our organization.
All right. I think Parul spoke something. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll just add about the cost of recruitment. So in Middle East, the cost of recruitment works quite differently because this is an expat-dominated market. So your recruitment cost is not just the cost of sourcing and hiring you, it's also onboarding the candidate, visas, labor permits, etc. So as a ratio of all of that, the actual recruitment cost is quite low. So will AI or a
You're saying the recruitment cost in this part of the world is lower?
No, it's higher.
Higher.
As in, I'm saying just the sourcing bit of the candidate is as a ratio to rest of it. The actual onboarding of the candidate is much higher.
Acclimatizing them to the place.
Exactly.
Right.
So from holistic perspective, cost of recruitment it's not really going to drop too much.
Right.
It's still going to be at the level that it is because you still will have to fly in your candidates, you will have to onboard them, you'll have to provide a visa, you'll have to provide a labor permit. So all of that remains.
So just now that you said something very interesting, they say that you can use a lot of automation to do background checks on candidates.
Yes.
Automatic background checks and references, for example. You see that happening in the next 1 year in the place like the GCC?
So GCC already does that. So the background verification is quite strongly done with most of the major organizations.
That's normally the police thing, but like she said, for example, things like their personal values and things to do with home.
Okay, so what we're talking about is behavioral competencies, right? So
yeah.
behavioral competencies, again, there are tools available in the market and especially at leadership levels, there are a lot of psychometric assessments which are done to gauge the behavioral aspect. Is AI taking any sort of a lead on those? I don't think so. I don't still see any products of AI which are advanced enough to be able to do that. You still need those assessments, and you need certified professionals who can read through those assessments and can then give you more insight into the candidate. Will this get automated in far future? Maybe, yes. I mean, it'll definitely go in that direction. Would it become autonomous? No, I don't think so. I mean, human intervention again will be needed.
So far it sounds like everybody's been saying that, things are going to be slow, things are not going to impact things significantly, right? But the truth is, for example, the same research said that there's been a 75% reduction, and there's been a 35% reduction in, 35% reduction in employee turnover. So everybody wants to adapt these things. They've been diplomatic about it. Obviously, most of you are from the HR business, so you're going to be diplomatic about it. But the one question that I've got to know is assuming that you were to sort of see this migration coming in, do you foresee anything significant in the next 1 year, or is it going to take 2-3 years and slowly settle in, and you think everything is going to be, slow and steady?
I think it'll take 2-3 years. I don't think the landscape is going to go through a major disruptive change just in 1 year.
But you have a huge workforce entering the market, Gen Z. I mean, they're just coming in.
Gen Z is coming in. So, I mean, okay, that's Gen Z coming into the market is your reality. Whether you're using an AI tool, whether you're using a technology, or you go back to your manual way of recruiting. So the transformation that is going to happen, or the way companies will have to sort of enable themselves to be able to accommodate Gen Zs in their culture, or be able to modify their culture to attract Gen Z. That's a real challenge, and that's a challenge which I think everyone is dealing with.
See, for example, in the discussion room, one of the things that we discussed was the longevity of these guys, right? Many of them are looking at quick career changes. How do you ensure that using tech, AI, ML, automation, that they stay longer? How do you keep them vested in an organization?
So let me put it this way, that your Gen Z have grown with tech. They have grown with phones in their hands, with tablets next to their bed. So if you do not have tech around you, they're definitely not going to stick around. To do their day-to-day jobs, they need tech around them. So they would not get into an organization, or they wouldn't stick around in an organization which is still using archaic processes or archaic system. They would want that their systems are as modern as social media today, or as informative as ChatGPT or Google today. So that's their bare minimum expectation. It's not something which will retain them, but it is something definitely which will repel them.
Okay, so we've got 1 minute to go, and I'm going to ask a question. For each one of you can give a one-liner, right? First thing that comes to your mind. As HR personnel, are you scared that the same trend that's happening in the market could one day threaten your jobs as HR senior people? Could it replace the very concept of human resources by itself?
So
Simon?
I mean, if this question is only to the HR folks over here, 3 of us, I would say I'm not. Definitely not.
Simon, would you think that HR would become redundant as an activity? I'm not talking about counseling and all those things. I'm talking about human resources from the point of recruitment.
No. I see this as a tool to enable them to be more efficient.
More efficient.
That's it.
Parul?
I think from the aspect of talent acquisition, definitely no. But honestly, on a different side, I think there'll be many parts of our jobs will become redundant over a period of 5-year horizons.
5 years.
Yeah, but at the same time, the new parts will emerge.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes,
so the certain parts will become redundant, and there'll be new parts which will come in. But talent acquisition, I don't think so.
Think so. Udit, what do you think?
I think the role will become more efficient. It'll be more business, and HR will become more smarter. It'll be more important role in the company rather than just being a support function. It'll become a more important function in the organization, because human behavior will tomorrow govern everything, which is going to be how the company is going to be run.
Ambika?
Thank you. Like Parul said, HR operations, the entire back-end management would become redundant, in my view. But everything around talent management and people development would still be managed by HR?
So I think we're talking about data sifting, getting the right candidates, creating a coherence between candidates and the organization, quality time that HR people can spend with candidates rather than interviewing multitudes of people. I think a lot more qualitative work is going to get done. I think one of the things that we saw out of this entire panel is that while AI, ML, and tech can be intimidating, I think in the retail perspective, there's going to be a lot of changes by I think the coherence of getting better candidates and organizations' expectations are going to be more, it's going to be more leveled out. So I want to thank all of you for being a part of this panel and for these amazing insights that you've given. Thank you.